Picture a world map in your head. Not the one from school with clean lines and bright colors. A map made of living people. People moving slowly. Like water. Like wind. Like animals following seasons. Most of the time that movement is quiet. It is not a breaking news story. It is one person leaving a dry farm to find work in a city. It is a family joining relatives in another town. It is a student taking a job in another country and sending money home. It is a nurse moving to where hospitals need staff. It is a builder moving to where housing is being built. It is someone getting on a bus with one suitcase and a phone and a plan that is not fully formed. If you step back far enough, movement is not the exception. It is the background. And yet when we open the news, the story of movement is almost always told as a crisis. A threat. A problem to solve. It is told with images of crowds at a border. It is told with language that makes motion look like chaos. And because we see it that way, we start to feel a certain kind of fear. A fear that is not always about facts. It is about loss of control. A fear that says if people move, something stable will break. That is the hook. We are not only afraid of migrants. We are afraid of change. And migration is the easiest kind of change to point at because it has faces. It has accents. It has names. It can be made visible. And when something is visible, it is easy to blame it for invisible problems. Rising rent. Crowded schools. A stressed hospital. A job market that feels uncertain. These are hard problems. They take time. They involve policy and planning and sacrifice. So a simpler story appears. The story says it is their fault. It feels clean. It feels satisfying. It gives us a target. But it hides something important. The deeper story is that movement has always been part of being human. Not a new feature. Not a modern trend. It is older than any borderline. And what is different today is not only how people move. It is how we talk about people moving. The context matters because our minds are shaped by frames. If the frame is crisis, we interpret everything as danger. If the frame is nature, we interpret movement as part of life. If the frame is economics, we ask what is gained and what is needed. If the frame is identity, we ask who belongs. The same reality can feel completely different depending on the frame. That is why the first insight has to begin on the surface with a simple shift. Migration is not a single event. It is a normal part of life that becomes dramatic when systems fail. Most people on Earth do not cross borders. Most people live and die within the same country. That is easy to forget because the headlines are loud. But the loudest story is not always the biggest story. And when a small portion of the global population becomes the center of political attention, that should already make us curious. Not about them. About us. About why we are focusing so much on something that is not as big as it feels. The surface concept is that the feeling of crisis is often larger than the reality of movement. That does not mean movement is not hard. It can be painful. It can be risky. It can be unfair. But the size of the backlash often does not match the scale of the movement. This mismatch is a clue. It suggests the debate is not only about numbers. It is about meaning. It is about what migration represents in our imagination. This takes us to the hidden assumption. Many societies carry an old picture of the world that says people belong in fixed places. Like trees. Like rocks. Like objects on shelves. You are from here and you stay here. If you move, you are out of place. If you arrive, you are a disruption. This assumption feels natural because borders have been taught as normal. But borders are not nature. Borders are decisions. They are agreements. They are systems built over time. And when we mistake a system for nature, we become rigid. We start to talk as if motion is wrong. As if migration is an error. And then another hidden assumption slides in. We import a model from ecology that says there are limited resources and new people will drain them. It is the idea that a community is like a closed box. If you add more people, everyone gets less. This seems logical at first. But human communities are not closed boxes. Humans build. Humans invent. Humans trade. Humans expand what is possible. A new person is not only a mouth. A new person is also a mind. A pair of hands. A worker. A buyer. A neighbor. A taxpayer. A teacher. A cook. A founder. A friend. This is not romantic. It is practical. If you only see newcomers as consumers, you will fear them. If you also see them as producers, the picture changes. And this is where the structural pattern comes in. The pattern is not that migration creates crisis. The pattern is that blocked migration creates crisis. When you try to stop a natural flow without providing safe channels, the flow does not end. It changes shape. It becomes more dangerous. It becomes more sudden. It becomes more visible in the worst way. Like water hitting a wall, it finds cracks. It goes around. Sometimes it floods. The flood is then used as proof that the water is the problem. But the wall is the real story. When legal paths are narrow, people wait until a disaster pushes them. When rules do not match reality, movement happens through risk. When policies are designed mainly to keep people out, you end up with disorder that looks like proof of threat. This is the trap. We create the conditions of chaos and then we point at the chaos as the reason to tighten the system even more. This is why we keep seeing the same loop. Fear leads to blockage. Blockage leads to disorder. Disorder leads to more fear. Meanwhile, the real drivers of movement continue. Climate shifts. Conflict. Jobs moving. Birth rates falling. Cities growing. Families wanting safety. None of this ends because we feel tired of it. So the reframing has to be bold but calm. Migration is not the crisis. The crisis is our lack of a working system for human movement. And even deeper than that, the crisis is our habit of turning migrants into symbols. Symbols of threat. Symbols of charity. Symbols of political identity. When we do that, we stop seeing people as normal humans and we stop seeing ourselves clearly too. We start telling only two stories. Either migrants are villains who come to take. Or migrants are victims who come to beg. These stories fight each other in public. But they share the same mistake. They both picture migrants as a burden on the receiving society. One story says they are a dangerous burden. The other says they are a sad burden. And as long as those are the only stories available, public opinion swings back and forth. The system stays broken. The conversation stays hot. And nothing gets built. There is a third story that changes everything. Immigration is good for receiving societies when it is managed with normal tools, like infrastructure, housing, schools, and fair legal pathways. It is not a gift we hand out. It is a resource that can strengthen a country and a community. And it is not only about money. It is also about resilience. When populations shrink, labor shortages grow. When societies age, care work rises. When innovation slows, economies stall. New people can help fill those gaps. Not because they are magic. Because they are people. And people make systems work. Now bring this into daily life. Think about the places you already know. A restaurant that opened because someone brought a recipe from somewhere else. A hospital wing that runs because of nurses trained abroad. A construction site where half the workers speak another language. A small town that kept its school open because new families moved in. A neighborhood where a shop stayed alive because there were enough customers. These are not headline moments. They are quiet examples of how migration is already woven into normal life. Most of the time you do not notice it because it works. That is the point. When it works, it looks ordinary. When it is forced into illegal and unsafe channels, it looks like a spectacle. And we are trained to stare at spectacles. The application is not only for governments. It is also for how we think. We can practice seeing migration without drama. We can ask better questions. Instead of asking are migrants good or bad, we can ask what systems are missing that make movement chaotic. Instead of asking how do we stop people, we can ask how do we manage flow in a safe and orderly way. Instead of asking who belongs, we can ask what helps people integrate quickly and naturally. And the answer is often simple. Legal status. The ability to work. The ability to rent housing. The ability to move within a country to where jobs are. The ability to interact with neighbors without being made into an outcast. When people are allowed to enter life normally, most of the fear fades. Because people become familiar. And familiarity is the strongest medicine for fear. This is also why making migrants highly visible in special ways can backfire. Special lines. Special markers. Special restrictions. It signals to everyone that these people are not part of us. And that signal invites suspicion. But when people live alongside each other, work together, shop in the same places, send kids to school, the story changes by itself. It does not need a speech. It happens through contact. Through routine. Through boring life. And boring life is exactly what most migrants want. Not spotlight. Not drama. Just a stable place to build. Now we can deepen without adding new topics. There is another angle that matters. We rarely talk about the cost of people being trapped. We talk about the cost of people arriving. But what about the cost of people who cannot leave a failing place? People trapped by drought. People trapped by conflict. People trapped because there is no legal channel to move for work. When people are trapped, suffering grows. Desperation grows. Instability grows. And that instability does not stay neatly contained. It spills into the world through economic shocks, political shocks, and human pain. In that sense, movement is often not the danger. Being trapped is the danger. Mobility is a form of resilience. For humans and for many other species on Earth. We live on a changing planet. Always have. The question is not whether movement will happen. It is whether we will build systems that make movement safe and useful, or systems that make movement dangerous and chaotic. And there is one more quiet point. When we argue about migration, we are often arguing about identity. We fear that new people will erase what we love. But cultures are not fragile glass. Cultures are living things. They change slowly. They absorb. They blend. They create new traditions that later feel old. Many foods people call traditional were shaped by movement. Many cities people call timeless were built by arrivals and departures. Change is not the end of culture. Change is how culture stays alive. The real risk is not that culture changes. The real risk is that we harden our hearts and stop seeing each other as human. So as you think about the next migration headline you see, and the next strong feeling it stirs in you, what would change if you asked not who should be kept out, but what kind of world do we build when we decide that safe movement is normal and being trapped is the true crisis?